So in this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Thomas Flude. So Tom's the co-founder of Engineers Insight. First and foremost, thanks so much for joining me, Tom.
Pleasure.
And just to start off, can you just give us an insight really into the background of the product and how it all came about?
Yeah, sure. So my background is industrial automation. So I work for a few of the big automation brands. Whilst I was in my early 20s, noticed that we were spending a lot of money on print media, and thought there's got to be a better digital solution out there, and I couldn't find one. You know, they've all got websites, but they're full of flashing banner ads and overpopulated with text fields and not what I'm used to, or not what I was used to with social media. So the idea was that we'd create a mobile app for industry where engineers could go to and scroll through a newsfeed of products, and then they could click in and get the tech details, the documents, the drawings, they could send inquiries, but then importantly for the brands, they could actually get real analytics. Because, you know, we would spend tens of thousands of pounds but then have to assume a certain amount of readers would have seen it. Well, for a marketing person, ROI is key, so, you know, that's what we focus on now, you know, on that side of the marketplace, is for these brands that we can tell you how many users have looked at it. You know, we've got the details of the industries that they work in, the job titles they have, the employers they work for. So it's all data that's really important to them. They just don't have access to it at the minute. So yeah, Engineers Insight is and will be the central resource place for manufacturing.
Fantastic. And when I was doing like a little bit of research into it and like just doing a bit of digging, I found a quote from yourself that I thought was quite interesting. So you said that the Engineers Insight app is like your commitment to bringing manufacturing into the 21st century. So what specifically do you consider almost like archaic or outdated, with so-called traditional methods?
I suppose it's hit and hope. We were spending thousands of pounds on magazines, so I've no idea how many people had looked at it. Mm-hmm. You know, we got to a point at one of my last employers where we'd only ever buy the front page of a magazine. Obviously the price goes up for that, but it's the only page you could assume a certain percentage of the readership would actually see. And then, you know, the marketing manager at the time would ask us that if we ever got a lead, the first question is, did you see us in such and such magazine? Which for me as a 25-year-old seemed ludicrous. You know, every other industry had moved away from it decades ago. I assumed at that age that an app already existed, and it didn't. Now I'm talking to students, apprentices, graduates. They assume it exists. Well, it only exists because I've made it. It probably wouldn't have existed anyway, because people don't like change. They're just stuck with what they've got.
Yeah, it's almost like a case of sometimes you do need someone to just be a little bit bold and I guess kind of brave in many ways, because it can be a case of, you know, some people can kind of almost adopt the, you know, follow the leader approach and assume that just because nobody else is doing it, it's not broken. Yeah, absolutely. And so in the development of the app and like when you were, you know, almost like in the early stages, so how did you conduct market research to identify the gaps or issues that the app currently addresses, or is that in that product launch process?
Well, I was in the fortunate position that I was in the market, so I was already working for one side of the marketplace, being a brand that's trying to reach engineers and buyers and such with products. But then, of course, all of my customer base were giving me the feedback of what their problems were. So I went to a few engineers that I knew, said, "What about this?" And they said, "Well, that's great because, you know, especially the younger engineers weren't reading the magazines anyway." But then they'd just give me a shopping list of things that annoy them. Yeah. Things like documents. You know, there's still OEMs, machine builders that print manuals off into machine packs, hundreds of pages. Well, you know, why not integrate that into the app as well? And you know, that's when I said about the bookmark part of the app will be an area where an engineer can say, well, my machine's got XYZ, these are the 20 products on it, I've got a live directory of manuals and drawings, and send inquiries, and we time and date stamp everything. And then we took that feedback and I went back to some of the brands, and the brand said, Well, if you know that certain products are with certain engineers, we have another a problem of how do we tell them that something's end of life, because that's a huge issue for all of the brands. So then the next feature that comes out of that is, well, actually, if you tell us that this product's going to go end of life in 6 months, we could notify that user, because we know that they've got that product, this is going to be obsolete in 6 months, this is the replacement item, this is the upgrade path manual. Well, it keeps their customer in the portfolio of their products. Instead of what happens now is, engineers, they probably, chances are the manufacturer doesn't get a chance to tell them. So by the time product's obsolete, something goes wrong in the machine, you've lost that customer because one, they're upset they didn't know, and two, they're desperate to get the line moving. So they'll be on eBay or whatever they can, or the local distributor, to just get a replacement part. Then you've lost the customer.
Yeah, sure. And when you were obviously developing the app itself, and you're taking all these potential pain points from your your prospective users or your personas, were there any specific features or functionalities within the app that you kind of prioritized and developed above developed above others to address particular challenges? Was there anything that you kind of thought, right, we really need to nail this down?
Documents was the first thing.
Was that the biggie?
Yeah, it was, because then that sets you apart from a marketing tool. Then you're a cross between a marketing newsfeed and a technical resource, which is probably where we'll find ourselves as we grow. Because if you can create enough value for the engineer to use it and to get value out of it, then naturally there's a pool of users there that the manufacturers want to reach with new product.
Yeah, sure. And did you kind of go into it, obviously the development process, and when you were going through, developing, the app, was there anything that you started at the start of the process where you thought, right, I view this as being the main pain point, I place this above a pedestal, we need to sort X, and then when you spoke to your prospective users, it kind of
They told me no.
it was out there basically. Can you share any sort of feedback or insights from users that led to any significant iterations or improvements in the app moving forwards?
Not huge. So early days, it was because we were just getting feelers from both sides of the market. We were developing it with them as such. So it wasn't, because we've been certain from the start, there's no point us building something that someone doesn't want. So we'll build something with these partners. So the early brands people like Siemens and SMC and KUKA, big brands that they were really early in the process, well, they were the ones that were basically saying, well, we want it to look like this, so that's how we sort that. And then I had this pool of engineers that by the time we got to a beta test, we had 250 of them that were then giving us their feedback of what they needed. So we weren't just going out there and throwing something out and saying, download this version of the app, and then people were saying, oh, this doesn't work, or we didn't want this. The other, a more recent version update was based off feedback from one of the brands, and it was totally right, and we should have done it sooner, it's just you have so many things to do, was video content on the newsfeed, a bit more like social media. So instead of just stationary images of product, or the application videos are behind the product, but actually having them on the newsfeed, we've seen a spike of 30% engagement rate on this one particular product that we just put an MP4 file on the front end. So now we built that into all products can have that as an option. So the newsfeed will feel more engaging for the user. Things will catch their eye and they'll watch, and we can, even better for the brands, we can tell them how many people have watched the video, how long they've got, the average view, how many pauses, how many plays, how many clicks into the product from that. All things that we just don't have in industry really.
Yeah, sure. And it's almost like those sort of metrics and those sort of behaviour, being able to really delve into that behaviour that is really beneficial, because as you say, it's all well and good being in a catalogue or a magazine, but you can't once you're in there, you can't really gauge user behaviour.
And we don't. When I first came up with the idea, people were saying, "Oh, is it just like an Argos catalogue?" Well, no, because people don't have Argos catalogues anymore anyway. But we don't want to take something from industry and just put it on an app. It's pointless, because the magazines could do that. We want to create something different and that gives so much value to both sides of the market that it's part of your daily use.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point just copying something else.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what in a nutshell, what it boils down to is the willingness to adopt new technology. And rightly or wrongly, sometimes manufacturing does have almost like a little bit of a stereotype attributed to it that it's very old-fashioned, it's kind of out there, and not. There's almost like a lack of willingness to accept new things. So when you were kind of trying to bring this to the market, what sort of, or did you experience any significant resistance? And if so, how did you kind of approach that?
Yes. I remember one customer, not a customer, one person I was introduced to that I pitched the idea. By this point, a lot of competitors were already on it.
Yeah.
And he said it wouldn't work for me because I already know every engineer in the UK. And I thought, well, you're part of the problem. There's no point me wasting my time with people like you. So that evening I went home and I emailed every college and university in the UK that offers engineering courses, and I said, I'm building this thing, it's completely free. Further education has the issue anyway that they don't have the strong links to industry. So students will come out of college or uni and they're in the deep end in a job. They've probably never seen the brands that we're talking about or the technology we're talking about. So we offered to them is that, download this for free. Your students actually get to see the application videos of the robots that are in industry and the brand names that they need to see, the brochures. They can ask application questions through the app. In return, I'll go in and we work closely actually with Warwick University's Engineering Society. So just before Christmas, we took in Siemens. We had a lecture hall of 80 something students where we introduced Engineers Insight, obviously. Shameless plug, but then actually we had product manager for drives explaining what a drive was, because you don't really see or feel what a product is whilst you're in education. And then we had a graduate at Siemens. She could talk about her experience leaving university, how she got into Siemens, opportunities as a grad. And then a sales manager to explain, being an engineer isn't wearing overalls and covered in oil. At Siemens there's probably 100 different job titles that all do completely different things. So that's the sort of thing, off the back of an annoying conversation like that you can get upset about, but then it just drives you into another thing. And that education piece for Engineers Insight is growing quicker than I even imagined. Yeah,
sure. Do you see Engineers Insight? I mean, obviously it is a new approach. It's almost like trying to push people towards trying to adopt a new way of thinking. But do you see it exclusively as we need to kind of push forward and embrace new technology, or do you see it as almost like a combination between the old and the new?
At the minute it is a combination between the old and the new, because the old at the minute is a pretty picture and a contact us here and an email address. And we've taken that and turned it into the new, which is the image, the video, the manuals, the brochures, send your inquiries, bookmark it, etc., send notifications. So it's a bridge between what exists and what should have existed a long time ago. When we sort of delve into all the 100 other features and avenues that we can go down, then it'll be a completely new ecosystem. And there are other ecosystems out there. There's platforms like How To Robot in the robot market that introduces integrators to applications, which is fantastic. But ours is a bigger ecosystem of every product, every user. It's free, and it's more of a resource hub.
What do you think? I mean, we said about earlier on before when you said, I checked to see if there was if this had been done before, it hadn't been done before, and so on and so forth. Why do you think it's taken so long in such a almost like a massive market that is manufacturing. Why do you think it's taking so long for this to materialise?
It was extremely hard to convince people outside of industry that it was needed.
Yeah.
So when we first came up with the idea, we thought, you watch Dragon's Den and Shark Tank and all this sort of crap, and you think, I'm going to go out and I'm going to raise £1 million and we're going to be this big tech company. And then you start talking to VCs and angel investors and they're like, nah.
Yeah.
A technology-driven industry like manufacturing, there's no way you're relying on magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. So I don't know is the answer. I think people don't like change. People are stuck in their ways. Why change something that's not broken? I suppose for some people. For me, it was broken.
Yeah. It just strikes me as being almost like something that is so simple but so effective, and it just makes things a lot easier than the current process. It just baffles me why there's so much resistance in some areas. Considering obviously like the data-driven approach to to marketing and product launches, how can how did you lean on data when you were launching your app, and how can brands leverage analytics to almost like improve the effectiveness of product launches moving forward?
Well, we're still in the early days, so everything we do is very basic at the minute, analytics wise.
Yep.
So we tell the brands how many users have opened the product, how many downloads of any of the PDFs, how many inquiries are sent, how many times users open the inquiry box and close it. Things like the video analytics I already spoke about. In the future, that will become a huge list of analytics that I always show in my pitch, but it's just another thing to add on at some point. For them, they all want the analytics now. They just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an easy sell. Even the most basic, how many people have viewed this product? I was on a pitch yesterday to a huge brand, and I'm always cautious when I go through my pitch deck that I'm one, not overselling, and two, not selling too short because we're still early, right? So brought up the analytics slide, and I said, look, it is still in its early days, so this is all we're given at the minute. He's like, no, we can see how many people have viewed it. That's all I need.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, all right, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I know other industries you would expect reams of analytics, but for us, getting a foot in the door with these places, these brands, just being able to say, 200 people have viewed this product in the last 90 days, and you've had X amount of inquiries and this amount of downloads of brochures, is a big thing. Which sounds strange for someone like you in a marketing firm, but
do you think people can get lost in numbers and just like
probably?
Do you think there's almost I was like sometimes. You say for someone like me in a marketing place, but I will gladly hold I'll gladly hold my hands up and I'll say numbers are not my forte.
Yeah.
I leave that to my colleagues, but it's one of those where I have spoken to people who can get just buried in data.
Of course.
And do you see that almost like as a hindrance to an effective product launch?
They don't have it. They don't have it to be a hindrance on them. You do an exhibition, all you've got really is how much you've spent versus how many leads you had on the show versus 6 months' time how many turned into projects.
Yeah.
That's it. That's quite a good metric to follow. If you got 2 projects that you made profit on that show, then the show was worth it. We don't, in manufacturing there really isn't hundreds to get buried in.
Yeah, sure. And obviously, this is looking like I don't want to kind of jinx it out, so touch wood, but it's looking like it's something that's a success story from your perspective, and for the manufacturing industry as a whole. So almost like what would be almost, I hate this question in so many ways, but what would be almost like your golden tip for bringing a product to market for a manufacturer who may be in, whether or not they're an experienced manufacturer looking to kind of pivot into something that is a little bit less traditional, or somebody who is in your shoes and they're bringing their first product to market? What would almost be like your your go-to piece of advice be?
Engineers insight now, Joe. No. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's marketing or as an engineer, project manager, it's ROI, right? So, you know, you need to know if the money you've spent was worth it. Or, you know, I used to sell automation products, you know, and for them it was, if we're going to buy a robot, well, how many months until we're making money out of the robot, you know, because you've got to spend a lot of money up front to automate a line, to remove people off the line, to then, you know, you want two years ROI. Well, marketing's the same, I suppose. The golden tip is don't spend too much money. I mean, we're even finding it now, actually, just dipping your toe in the water. Things like Google ads, LinkedIn ads, email marketing, everything we do is small samples, and it's testing, and it's just changing things and then testing it again. It's the one thing Stephen Bartlett always talks about, or most recently with the Diary of the CEO, they've got a team of people with the podcast that they just change thumbnails and then buy a different Facebook ad and see the engagement rate on that. And you don't have to spend that much money, but just keep testing different things to find a good result. Don't just chuck 10 grand into one thing and hope that it works, because it won't.
So, considering the technical nature of manufacturing, there are varying degrees of understanding. You know, you will have some people who are in the industry for years and they've got, as I say, they know the ins and outs of it, some to a lesser degree. So how important is it for companies launching products in the industry to almost like educate their audience during product launches, and what methods have you found works best?
Massive. So when I look at places I've worked in the past, we would just throw things out and hope that someone sees it and think, oh, that looks interesting. They probably don't. They think, oh, interesting colour of that widget. What works are things like video content. I see quite a lot actually on LinkedIn of people explaining the product or talking about the product, or all of the brands now have YouTube channels where you have like a product manager that stands next to their product on a machine and explains it in an application, or just the application moving behind them gets the engagement. What I would say works well is telling the story. So, more than just this is a product. Why would the customer bother using it is the real question. Even with our podcast, it's something we were, from the start, we said, we don't want someone to come in and just pitch who they work for. We want someone to sit in a chair and just explain what they wanted to be when they were a kid, and then what jobs they had through college and university, because it's about their story, and then the people watching it think, oh, that's a normal person. Doesn't matter that he's CEO of whoever. Worked at McDonald's. We had a guest that's a CEO of a vision company, and the little clip was that he got his 5 stars at McDonald's. Well, how many college and university students will be working in retail or fast food, and they'll watch it and think, well, actually I can relate to that person. It's not a hard sell. That gets people's interest, whereas you see a lot of hard sell that gets just flicked past.
I think that's the key to it, really. I think that you've kind of hit the nail on the head. It is adopting that human-centric approach, because I do think that at times companies can kind of get lost in the corporate side of things. And
they'll throw loads of corporate videos out there. They just get lost in news feeds. People skip past it.
I was going to say, it just gets lost in the noise then, doesn't it?
It does,
But if you just pop something out there, make it relatable, as you say, that's certainly something that appeals to me. I guess that kind of like links into what I was going to ask you next. So in manufacturing, again, relationships and reputation, they're essential. So what processes did you put in place to almost like build trust and credibility in your respective industry when you were launching the app, or when you were preparing to launch the app?
I talk about this quite a lot actually. It's relationship and connection is important. Whether you know you're going to build a startup at some point in the future, just in your day job, it's important. So I've known for 4 or 5 years that at some point Engineers Insight might exist. That in the back of my mind, I always had a LinkedIn strategy of who I was connecting with, and every person I met I would connect with, because at some point they're going to engage with your content. So that was one part. Me as a person, throughout all of my sales jobs, again, it was about connecting with the person that you talk to. Because, you know, I could be wearing a hat that day for that brand, but 2 years time I'd be wearing a different brand's hat. But it's still going to have the connection with the customer, and that customer might have gone to a different place as well. So if you don't have the relationship with them, then, you know, you're just in a transactional meeting and give me a PO. All right, well, that's only because your price is £1 cheaper. And actually, if you know the person and engage with them, there's some authenticity in the conversation, then that goes a long way. So I think I've done well in that respect. You know, wherever I've worked, I've gained friends actually. You know, there's a lot of people that you would call colleagues, but then there's a lot of people that I still WhatsApp, text, we meet up. The guys from Schneider, we meet up, you know, every few months. Either someone's retiring because they're all old boys now. But just that, there's still 15, 16 of us in a group message. I left there 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So that, you know, it sticks with people.
So just to finish, so I'm going to finish on another quote from yourself. So you've said that you're shaping the future of the industry, but what does the future of the manufacturing industry look like in your eyes?
I said I was shaping the future. That's worrying. I think, connecting to that quote, the future of industry has to be more connected. You know, yes, technology and Industry 4.0, AI, analytics on the shop floor, all of that brings this connection. But as people, as associations, end users, OEMs, we all need to be more connected. There's a drive, Andrea Wilson on LinkedIn, she'll be happy with that little plug. Her campaign is for a minister for manufacturing, because we need some sort of strategy. We need government to tell us where the money's being spent and what's the focus for UK manufacturing, how it helps the economy, and we need to change the mindset of people that manufacturing is a dirty job. It's not. It's an amazing job. You know, there's thousands of jobs within UK manufacturing that kids don't know about, which is why we're sort of delving into that world of how do we tell kids about it. I'm actually at a sixth form, Corby sixth form, at the end of March with IGUS, taking a robot in, doing workshops with students that are doing their A-levels. They don't know if they want to be an engineer or not.
Yeah.
But it's a great time for them to see how brilliant technology is and understand, you know, that it's a fantastic career to get into. So connection, I hope that that's the future of manufacturing. I hope. Awesome.
Tom, that was brilliant chat. Really enjoyed it. So just for our listeners then, 2 things. Podcast. Where can they hear your podcast?
Yeah, so YouTube. It's called Through the Eye. We interview business leaders about, I think we've already spoke about it, what they wanted to be when they were a kid and how they got to their job and challenges they've faced, that sort of thing.
And more importantly, Engineers Insight. How can the listeners download the app and get involved really?
Yeah, so it's completely free. It's on the app stores. Just search Engineers Insight, download it from there. It's a very quick sign up process, then you're in. If you're a bit dubious, follow me on LinkedIn. I post quite a lot on there anyway, so you can see the journey. We do a weekly newsletter where I talk about the crap you have to deal with being a first time founder and challenges that I've faced, the meetings that I've had that week, which gets quite a lot of reads. But yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn if if you're interested, if I haven't bored you to this point, you've turned off by now.
Oh, I know, I hope not. And if you are dubious, check it out, because I've checked it out. It's a really brilliant app, and I'm sure it'll be a fantastic addition to the manufacturing world. Tom, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bro.